turn my light on.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you're watching or listening to us. This is the Awesemo Nhl Dfs Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. Joining me as we begin this 2-month odyssey for the greatest trophy in sports, and by that I mean the 36th place trophy from the Fantasy Hockey World Championships, is last year's holder of that trophy, Mr. Joshua Harris. Josh, how you doing today, bud?
Exciting. Playoffs are starting. Got some great games yesterday, and then we had the Canucks game randomly at 10:30 p.m. Like, what? I can't believe it. You know what does make me smile? Maybe I'm just cruel. I love seeing Kucherov do good. It just makes the Leafs fans on Twitter squirm, and I love to see it.
Yeah, that's an interesting development for the playoffs here.
They started it.
Yeah, that's the thing is, okay, for people that might just, kind of hop in and out of DFS or whatever, Nikita Kucherov, who's a perennial MVP candidate, was injured all year for Tampa Bay, which meant that they didn't have to put his cap hit on the books. And then they activated him after the regular season for the playoffs. There was a serious injury. It was a serious hip injury. Now, it seems pretty obvious that he probably could have returned a couple of weeks ago. But the thing is like this sort of cap manipulation was started by the Leafs. It's called Robidas Island for a reason. Stefan Robidas was a defenseman for the Leafs years and years and years ago. And eventually he broke down and was terrible. So they just concocted an injury to take his cap hit off the books so that they could sign more players. And numerous teams have done this over the years. We've seen this happen with injured players, Nathan Horton, David Clarkson, guys like that, Marian Hossa, Brent Seabrook. Some of these players have legitimate injuries. Some of them don't. That's just the way it goes. It just so happened that this year it worked out that a cup contender could add a significant piece at the end of the year. But teams have been doing this for as long as I've been writing about hockey. I'm sure since, the Devils got dinged for a 15-year contract or whatever it was for Ilya Kovalchuk, 12 years ago now or whatever it was. This kind of cap circumvention is just something that's commonplace in hockey. I don't know why everybody's getting so rankled about it. I guess it's because it's a good player coming to a cup contender and not like a second pair defenseman coming in for a playoff team that scraped in.
Hey, the Leafs did it too, not to the Kucherov level this year with Riley Nash. He was on the IR. He's going to be back for the playoffs. I mean, it's Riley Nash, it's not Nikita Kucherov, but I just like to see the Leafs fans squirm.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I think somebody pointed out like Vancouver did the exact same thing 10 years ago in 2011. They ended up with a cap with a roster 20 million over the cap or something like that when the playoffs hit. Like smart teams do this, bad teams and dumb teams don't. That's just kind of the way it goes. Smart teams are trying to figure the way around this. Tampa Bay figured a way around it, and now here they are, locked and loaded, looking good for the playoffs. It was a pretty crazy slate. Yet, like that game in general was just an awesome game. Florida, Tampa Bay. I think we saw the scoring upside for both teams. It was kind of a dirty game. There was few hits from behind. But the game that I want to talk about first is that Islanders-Penguins game, because that third line for the Islanders was just unbelievable. Palmieri, Pajot, and Wahlstrom. I mean, Wahlstrom is a guy that you and I picked quite a bit this year in DFS because his line down on the third line, especially once Pajot came over in the trade, was really good. It's just that the problem is that they don't get a ton of minutes, but with Evgeny Malkin out, it seems hard for Pittsburgh to run three lines now. So the depth from the Islanders really showed out yesterday.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem for the Penguins all series. I mean, even if Malcolm comes back, he hasn't looked good all season. So, I mean, I guess their saving grace is if Malcolm does come back, you get Carter and McCann going up against IL-3 when they're at home. But when the series shifts to Long Island, I mean, it's going to be a problem. And then, if you have Palmieri playing to any kind of like, if he raises his play to how he does with New Jersey in the playoffs, that line's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it is. And, we talked about how Komarov seems to be fitting in on the top line pretty well. In that second line, Beauvillier, Nelson, Bailey, they've just been really good all year. The Islanders look like a problem. If that third line can keep playing, you don't expect them to score 3 or 4 goals every game, but if they keep playing as well as they did yesterday, it could be a big problem for Pittsburgh. Minnesota, Vegas, that one went to overtime. Cam Talbot stood on his head, 42 save shutout. Marc-Andre Fleury looked really, really good as well. I think this was an important game, I think, for DFSers to see that there are no real bad teams in the playoffs. Like I think there were last year because you had the play-in, so you had 8 additional teams or whatever. Half the league is gone now. Like the worst teams in the playoffs, like maybe some like a Winnipeg team. You could say maybe like St. Louis probably doesn't look very good, and we'll talk about them later. But there are no bad teams left. And yeah, you could say Vegas outplayed Minnesota yesterday, and they did. Fleury still had to make 3 or 4 10-bell saves to keep that a close game. And it kind of shows, some of these games might be like lopsided, but a lot of these teams are very close together.
Yeah, it was huge for the Wild to get a game in Vegas, especially because like Pacioretty's going to be coming back at some point. But when the series switches to Minnesota, you're going to get that Joel Eriksson-Ek line going out against the Vegas top line for 20, 21 minutes. Like the more they play, the better the Wild are going to be because that line is tremendous. And they've actually been really good offensively in the past month. So this, on the surface, it looks like a mismatch because Vegas is one of the best teams in the NHL. But, you get good goaltending from Talbot or Kakinen, whoever it is, like the Wild are going to be right in it because that Joel Eriksson-Ek line is a problemo.
Yeah, it is. And that's a good point about them getting back to Minnesota. Like, even if this is a 1-1 series going back, now you get to dictate the matchups, which effectively takes the Stone line out of the equation. Minnesota looking good to start here in this 2021 playoffs. That last game, Tampa Bay, Florida, lots of scoring, very high scoring. Sergei Bobrovsky certainly did look very good. I'm wondering how long it might be till they go to either Dridger or even Spencer Knight in that.
Yeah, I mean, that game was wild. Where's Vots? It was wild. But that first period was one of the best periods of hockey all season. It might have been the best. But, yeah, I'm not sure how long you can ride Bobrovsky here. Dridger is a better goalie. Spencer Knight's an unknown, but, he has played, at high levels competition internationally. So you might as well give him a shot. I think they feel obliged to play Bobrovsky because that contract is just brutal and they want to get their money's worth. But I think if you want your best chance to win, it's probably Dridger at this point.
Yeah, I think this might be I think Bobrovsky might start game 2, but it'll be a thing like if he lets in a goal or 2 early, that'll be it for him. So Sergei Bobrovsky looks like he might be a little bit on the ropes. We do have some NHL to talk about today. Before we get to all those games, we should talk some Showdown because Showdown is something that's very important. Before we get to that, I see a couple super chats. First, from Clayton, $5 super chat from Clayton. Wanted to thank you. I'm assuming that's me, Josh, Jake, and all the awesome guys at Slack for making this my most profitable in NHL DFS year ever. That's awesome stuff to hear, Clayton. We love to hear that not only that you had a couple good nights along the way, but it was sustained success enough to have a profitable season. It was a tough year, lots of late lineup swaps and stuff like that. So good on you, Clayton. Thanks for sticking with it all year. Let's keep this going through playoffs. And I see Grade A Flicks as well, a $20 super chat. Thank you very much. Big shout to Cliffy, Josh, and my man Jake Harry. Tied for first in the Boston Washington single game over the weekend. Took Jake's advice on Pasternak. Then had Oshie at captain with the rest of Washington 3. Great show. Arden from Yonkers. Shout out Yonkers. Thank you very much for that $20 super chat. Yonkers a little bit closer to your neck of the woods than mine, right, Josh?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty close to Yonkers, and also we like being on the air in these shows, and we like doing these shows. So we need to get, the viewership as good as we can. We need to get those likes. And I saw in the other show, Eric, the show gets 1,500 likes. I'm going to shave a little piece of my eyebrow. I'm going to raise the bar a little bit to keep these eyes on the hockey shows. 2,000 likes. 2,000 likes. I will get a hockey-related tattoo. And it'll be a weird one. It could be Kermit in a Artie Zoob jersey. It could be, character Sam Bennett with the big mustache. You guys follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. You can give me some crazy hockey ideas. It's got to be within reason. I want to keep it, PG. I don't need to get an X-rated tattoo for you guys, but I will get a PG-rated goofy tattoo, hockey-related. 2,000 likes. Let's do it. Let's get those hockey views up.
All right, you guys out there that are watching this show, you guys have a little bit of homework right now. You have to tell all your friends, all your family, to at the very least like this video, tell them to watch this video as well. Josh is serious when he says that. He will absolutely get that tattoo. I've been pushing him for Kermit the Frog wearing an Artie Zoom jersey. What the final decision will be, we'll see. But yes, please try to get us to 2,000 likes. Tell as many people as you know.
If we get to 2,000, I'll put a poll out on Twitter. You can follow me there. I'll take a couple of my suggestions and a couple of your suggestions, throw it in the poll, and whatever one wins, and we'll post it when it's done.
There we go. So it's just that easy. Throw us a like. Tell as many people as you can to give us a like. Throw it around in the Slack channels. Throw it around in your own Slack channels. Wherever you talk to people, make sure they know they have to give Josh Harris a like if they want to see him tattoo something like Kermit the Frog wearing an Artem Zub jersey on his body. Please help us out. I really want to see this. All right. We do have some NHL to talk about. Let's talk Showdown real quick. Showdown is something we're going to see those pretty much every night now. You have 3 separate Showdown slates for just tonight alone. There's a big one later tonight, St. Louis, Colorado, $5,000 to first, which was, if I'm not mistaken, that was the size of the full day slate yesterday. So like there could be some good Showdown slates. Now we've talked about Showdown a little bit before, but just to give people kind of the basics, you have to pick for both teams. You have to have at least one player from both teams. You have 6 roster slots with 1 captain. Your captain is worth 1.5 points. So if they score 30 points, you add half of that, which is 15, to give you 45 points total. Strategy, I think, is kind of the important thing here. And I just want to talk about one thing I want to talk about initially is full line goals, because we talk about stacking a lot here, because stacking is very, very important, because you stack your points up when you get those goals, right? You get those full line goals, you get that 20 points. It feels real good. The thing is that full line goals aren't things that are super common. Like I just looked from this year, from last year, just from a few lines that play together quite often. Fewer than half. Now think of how much McDavid and Draisaitl play together this year, both at 5-on-5 and the power play combined. Fewer than half of McDavid's goals were assisted by Draisaitl this year. Over the last 2 years, 15 out of 55 goals, or around 33%. No, a little bit more than that. By McKinnon over the last 2 years were assisted by Gabriel Landeskog, so less than a third. This year, once David Pastrnak got healthy at the end of January for Boston, and Boston's top line was back together, Patrice Bergeron scored 20 goals after that point. 5 of them were full line goals. And that line plays every single second together. I mean, pretty much, I think there was like 2 games where David Pastrnak played down on the second line. But other than that, they played almost every single second together, and only a quarter of their goals were full line goals. Full line goals aren't common. It's just that when they do happen, and like they do happen when you have 8 or 9 games on a slate, that's why we say to stack. They just don't happen as often when you only have 1 game on a slate. So you don't need the 3-man stack. You don't need the power play stack. You don't need, all 3 guys off an even strength line, or 4 forwards off a power play, or something like that to get ahead. And quite often, in fact, you're not going to get anywhere doing that. So that's one thing that I would say, is that 3-man full stacking isn't something that is as important in showdowns as it might normally be on, a 7-game slate or an 8-game slate or something like that. What are some tips that you think are important for Showdown?
Well, I mean, one lineup for Showdown is a lot harder than it sounds. Like I'd rather play one lineup in a classic slate than one lineup in a Showdown slate, especially because like you make your lineups based on how you think the game flow is going to be. And if you play one lineup and your game flow is wrong, you're going to not be even close to the money. So the big showdown tonight, what 5K to first, is the Colorado Avalanche Blues game. And I think, we always talk about how the Avalanche are really good defensively, this and that. Their goaltending isn't great. So like, and you want to get in someone like a McKinnon. So something like I would probably do if I think, the Avs win this game handily, like 5-2, something like that, and you don't want a full stack because that's just super expensive and probably the expected value is probably negative there. So you might want to do something like McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, and then in your captain spot, you have someone like Graves who blocks shots, and you hope you get like the block shot bonus, and then you try to one off the guy on the Blues that you think is going to score, like a cheaper guy like a Hoffman, something like that. Like you have a couple decisions to make on how you make lineups, right? You either have both goalies, which totally takes up your cap and you have to punt. You put in who you think is going to win and you have the winning goalie, and then you still have to punt. Or you think, it's going to be semi-high scoring and you think, the winning goalie may have a good score, but he may not be on the optimal lineup. So you want to get those power play guys in, then you have, punt defensemen. You hope they get the combo meal bonuses. Like the best advice I can give you is, if you're going to do MME, you make groups in the optimizer on how you think game flow is going to be. One lineup, you just have to, it's your best guess, really. That's all, it all really is. And you build according to how you think the game flow is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's the game flow, I think, is probably the most important part of Showdown. It's not something that we talk about a lot in NHL because it's not super important when you have an 8-game slate or a 10-game slate or something like that, because multiple lines will get there, right? Like if you have a 10-game slate, you might have 3 or 4 different full lines that go nuclear on any given night. Like there might be one that is better than the other, but you might have like multiple lines vying for that second most popular stack. So like maybe you look in the $10 and there's, Colorado 1 plus, Boston 2 or something like that. And then you look in the $4 and it's Colorado 1 plus Washington 2 or something like that, right? Like that happens a lot on bigger slates. On smaller slates, there's a narrow avenue for you to win. There's only one game flow to project. And if you get that game flow wrong, you're toast. Like if you think the game flow in St. Louis, Colorado tonight is going to be low scoring, so you stack 2 goalies and a couple defensemen and it's a 6-5 game, there's just no hope of winning. None. So like you have to nail the game flow, and then you have to get the right players inside that game flow, which is like the point that you made about someone like Ryan Graves is the point there. Is like if, let's say, Colorado gets out to a quick 3-0 lead here tonight, McKinnon has a goal, Landeskog has a goal, maybe Makar has a couple assists, and then they kind of sit on that lead, right? That's where Graves can really rack up his value. He can get, maybe he has an assist and then he racks up the block shots as Colorado sits back and something like that. And then he gains value through the game because of that game flow. And that's where, Graves and captain, even though you have McKinnon and Rantanen on your lineup, that's something that would win. And that's something that's important to think about when you're making your Showdown lineups, is you have to think about how is this game going to go tonight? Like if you were looking at Minnesota Vegas yesterday and you thought this is going to be a goalie duel, and you had Cam Talbot in your captain and you had Fleury in the lineup, you cashed. Straight up, you cashed. If you thought it was going to be a 4-3 game and you had neither goalies and you had a bunch of forwards, you were nowhere near cashing. That's just the way it works. So you have to think about the game flow when you're making your lineups. You have to think about, if this team gets out to a lead, who's going to benefit? Like, if Colorado gets out to a 3-0 lead, who benefits after that? Well, it's defensemen that'll be blocking shots because, you'd expect the opposition to shoot more, and it'll be the goalies saving those shots, right? So goalies and defensemen in a blowout can be very viable as a captain. So game flow is probably the most important thing. Think about how you think that game is going to go, and then plan that lineup accordingly. If you think it's going to be a 6-5 game, get a bunch of forwards from both lines. Don't include any goalies. If you think it's going to be a 1-0, 2-1 low scoring game with a lot of shots like Minnesota Vegas yesterday, put both goalies and some defensemen in there. Get those saves and get those block shots in your lineups. You're not every game is going to feature 7 or 8 goals. Margin of victory is going to be razor thin. We're talking a block shot or two is going to mean the difference between maybe winning like 5,000 and winning like 500. So just really pay attention to game flow, stack accordingly like that. Pricing is something like you have to pay attention to it, but typically, like if you're looking for shot blocking defensemen and stuff like that, you're probably going to have one punt-ish or two in your lineup anyway. So pricing isn't something I'm overly concerned with in Showdown. Are you?
No, and especially in the playoffs, I wouldn't be afraid of using bottom six players, especially on like the elite team, like the Avs, like someone like Alex Newhook. You know, he could have you want to get him before, you know, if he has a couple big games before his price like skyrockets. Like he's someone who's going to be on the ice. He's a skillful player. Yeah, he might be on the third or fourth line tonight, but he's gonna play. Like he's a good player. So don't be afraid to, you know, put that guy in the utility spot to jam in some more studs, something like that. You know, on the Blues, you know, like a Sammy Blais or something like that. Like just because they had a bad regular season doesn't mean they amp it up and have a good playoffs. We've seen it all the time. Like guys who have mediocre regular seasons have great playoff runs. Like Sam Bennett. Like I know that's kind of a bad example. Like I don't know what the hell they're doing in Calgary right now. Like how he couldn't crack the top six. But like he comes on into the Panthers, like he's in their top six, and he had a combo meal, 2 assists. Like he had a huge game yesterday. Like players like that, like you think, oh, Sam Bennett, like he couldn't even crack the Flames top six. Now he's just like every game he's a multi-point scorer. So like that's not going to happen every game, but like you find someone in the bottom six, like I don't know, like a Nick Ritchie or a Carl Hagelin, something like that. Like names, you know, that don't jump off the page, but you know they've done it in the playoffs before. So don't be afraid to use bottom six players.
Yeah, bottom six players. And the point of this being the playoffs, I think, is the final point to make here. And it goes back to your point about shot blocking defensemen and stuff like that. You know, if you get a double overtime game or a triple overtime game, you want goalies and defensemen, right? Because the forwards aren't racking up. You know, they might add a shot or two or three through overtime, but if no one's scoring, they're not racking up big points. The big points are being racked up by the defensemen and the goalies. So that's another thing to keep in mind for Showdown for playoffs. Is that, you know, just think of that Tampa Columbus game last year that went like 5 overtimes or something like that. And Korpisalo had like 90 saves or whatever, right? Like you won't get a forward up to 23 shots on goal or something like that, but you will get a goalie, you know, up at around 70 saves if this goes to 3 overtimes. So that's another thing about rostering goalies and defensemen in Showdown. I don't have a whole lot left to say about this. Is there anything you want to add?
No, but like going forward, you know, once these 3-game, 4-game first round slates are over, it's going to be mostly Showdown. So, you know, if you're not comfortable playing like the higher dollar stuff, getting that mini max, if there is one, you know, learn how to make your groups in Fantasy Cruncher, fool around with that stuff with game flow and, you know, get comfortable if you want to stick around for hockey, because after this first round, it's going to be a lot of Showdown.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I think there is a mini max, and they also do like a 25-cent 20 max. So like there are ways to sharpen your Fantasy Cruncher skills for Showdown without spending a lot of money. All right, that'll do it for our little Showdown. Like if you guys have any questions, obviously just hit us up in Slack. We're going to be around playing DFS. Probably right through to the finals. So just, you know, yeah, exactly. So just hit up either Josh or I or Jake, any of the people in Slack will help you along with Showdown. But we do have to get to the games here today. Before we get to the games, just want to remind everybody that if we get to 2,000 likes, Josh is going to get some sort of weird hockey tattoo. So please please subscribe. Those subscriptions really help us grow this channel. And don't forget, if you can't catch all of our YouTube shows live as they happen, you can head to awesemo.com/podcast. Check out what we have going on for our podcast. Almost all of our shows, go up in some sort of pod form other than our live before locks. Leave a 5-star review with your Twitter handle or email address, and you have a chance to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and that is good for up to 1 year, so you can win before next baseball season, before next football season, whenever. So head to awesemo.com/podcast. Check out what we have going on for pods. All right. Let's get to our first game of the night. We have Boston with a 2.9 implied goal total going into Washington. The Caps have a 2.5 implied goal total. Craig Anderson looks like he's going to be going for Washington, as Vitek Vanacek looked like he pulled his groin in that last game, making a stretch save. So it's going to be Craig Anderson in net, I'm assuming against Tuukka Rask. This is weird in the sense that Boston is favored on the road, and all that's really changed is Vanacek and Anderson. Like, Boston was favored in the first game, but they lost, and Washington arguably looked better. Like, I think Washington probably deserved to win that game. So that they ended up winning isn't a big sweat off my brow. What are you seeing in this game here? Like, are you going all in on Boston because of Anderson? Do you think there's some ownership opportunities on Washington? What do you like?
I mean, for the most part, I'm on team goalie skill. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So, like, Craig Anderson, he's done it before. Like, he's not he's getting older. He's at the end of his career, but he's been in playoff games before. This is nothing new to him. So, I mean, would I increase my Boston ownership a bit because Craig Anderson is in goal? Maybe, but it's not something I'm like, whoa, got to get in Boston now because Craig Anderson's in. It's not something that I'm, overly concerned about. And another thing that the Caps did was they glued the Lars Eller line to the Boston top line in game one, which is a bit interesting. I guess, Lars Eller is probably, with Kuznetsov out, is probably their best defensive center. I mean, like, Backstrom with Ovechkin, like, Backstrom may be better than Eller, but Ovechkin's pretty bad defensively. And you don't really want Ovechkin going up against the Bergeron line. You want him freed up against, the second line or the third line, whoever they send him out against. So I think there's stuff to like on both sides here, because we've talked about it a lot this season. And yeah, the Hall trade has kind of stabilized their middle six. But after you get past the Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak line, Boston kind of falls off a lot. Well, since the Taylor Hall trade, it's kind of evened out, but after, Boston one's off the ice, Boston defensively, their numbers have dropped pretty good. So I don't have an issue going back to this Washington top line tonight. Ovechkin, Backstrom, Mantha, they're not overly expensive. Mantha and Backstrom under 5,000. Ovechkin's always the same price. He's either, 8,000 or 8,300, something like that. They're fully correlated on the power play. There's going to be some power play chances in this game. They're going to avoid the Bergeron line for the most part. So, they're probably going to, I wouldn't say they're always going to have a plus matchup because, it's playoff hockey, it's physical hockey, but, they're not going to have an overly negative matchup going against Bergeron. So I like the Washington top line here. The second line, going against the Bergeron line kind of takes me off them. They are super cheap, so I don't mind taking a piece of like a Eller or a Sheary. And, it's a 3-game slate, and you're like, why? It's just because they're going to have so much time on the ice being glued to Bergeron. They're super cheap. 20 minutes of Lars Eller at 3,600 on the second power play isn't the worst thing in the world. So, if you want to get a bit different, I don't mind going there. And then that third line, Sprong, Oshie, Wilson, they're going to get good matchups. Oshie's on the top power play, Sprong's not on the power play, and Wilson's on the second power play. But, the power play correlation here doesn't matter. They're going to get a good 5-on-5 matchup. So I don't mind using pieces. I don't know if I'd full stack that line, but I don't mind going like an Oshie Sprong or an Oshie Wilson, something like that. So I think you can go there. And then the Boston top line, their prices come down. Like, they were 24.5 something during the regular season. So they're, for them, they're cheap. And yeah, Eller's their best defensive center, but it's Sheary and it's Raffle on the wing. So it's like nothing to write home about. Boston one's an elite line. They're fully correlated. Yeah, and if people want to play the narrative street like, oh, Craig Anderson's in net, I think, Boston may be a tad over-owned. I'm not sure how their leverage is, but I think, if you're going to use Boston one, I have no issues with it. So you can go there. The Boston second line, Hall, Krejci, Smith fully correlated on the second power play unit. That doesn't really mean much. The top unit is on the ice for most of the power play. So, I don't know if I'd full stack that second line going against Backstrom, Ovechkin. I'd probably, have like a Hall, Krejci 2-man, something like that, a Smith, Krejci, Smith, Hall. I don't know if I'd full stack there. And then on the third line, I think, Nick Ritchie under 4,000 on top power play makes some sense as a one-off tonight.
All right. I think I'm just going straight to Boston one. Here's the thing. Like, you talk about their price drop. This is what's running through my head is like towards the end of the season, we weren't playing Boston one a lot. because you could tell that they were saving their ice time, right? Like Marchand and Bergeron and Pasternak were all playing like 16, 17 minutes, which was nowhere close to where they normally play. And they were priced, like you said, around 24-5. We get to the playoffs. In the first game, they all played over 21 minutes. Each person, at least over 20. All three players on the top line played over 20, if not over 21 minutes. Their price comes down $3,000. They get 4 more minutes of ice time each. And they're going against Connor Sheary and Michael Raffl. It's like, yeah. Like, I am so in on Boston 1 here today. Like, I agree with you that Lars Eller is probably their best shutdown center, but Connor Sheary and Michael Raffl don't scare me at all. Like, I'm sorry. They just do not terrify me as a shutdown line. So if I'm going to get Boston in a plus matchup, Boston 1 in a plus matchup, $3,000 less than they were 2 weeks ago, with more ice time than they were getting 2 weeks ago, at roughly the same ownership rate as Washington. And like, I realize Washington is a lot cheaper, but I feel like Boston is a considerably better line. Like, yeah, I just love Boston 1 here today. I love their price. I love their matchup. I love everything about this. Like, I know you say goalie skill doesn't matter. I'm on team Craig Anderson is bad. Like, that's the only here, this will interest you. The only goalie with a better goal saved above expected from 2017 through 2020 than Craig Anderson was Marty Jones. Literally the second worst goalie by goals saved above expected. Next to Martin Jones. So, like, if you're going to tell me Boston 1, like I said, it's $3,000 cheaper, is getting more ice time, has a good matchup, and is coming in at roughly the same ownership as that Washington line, despite that price difference. Yeah, I'm in on Boston 1. I love them here today. I'm out on Boston 2. I do like that they're getting more ice time as well, but I think Boston 3 is where you can get a nice advantageous matchup. Like Oshie and Wilson, like Oshie's not a center. Wilson's not great defensively. Like that, I don't see how that line's going to be very good. I struggle to see it. And I agree with you that Boston's third line isn't very good either. It's just, I'd rather bank on the line that's using a center at center than using a winger at center, right? Like they're using 2 right wingers on that line. So I do like that third line, throw like a 2-man of Corrali and Ritchie. You get the PP 1 minutes for Ritchie. Corrali, nice and cheap, in a good matchup. So I do like Boston 3 a little bit as a filler. I'm in heavy on Boston 1. I'm out on Washington. I agree with you. I think Washington 1 is the play here. I don't like I said, I think Washington 3 is going to be bad. Washington 2 going up against Boston is a no-go for me. So yeah, I think it's Washington 1 or bust for me, but I'm going to have some caps. Like I think I'm going to play 10 to 20 lineups here tonight. So I'm going to probably have, 1 or 2 with caps 1, but I think I'll have a lot more Boston.
Yeah, their ownership is really high too.
Yeah, that's the thing is like Boston and Washington 1 are both coming in at roughly the same ownership. I know Washington is cheaper. I'd just rather play Boston. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On the blue line, Charlie McAvoy, I really like his price. Like we just talked about in our little showdown spiel about defensemen. I know he doesn't shoot a ton, but he can block shots. Charlie McAvoy, he's under $5,000. I like his price. I don't even hate the idea of like a John Carlson one-off here tonight. I could see an avenue where Washington wins this game like 3-1. First line gets a goal, second line gets a goal, empty netter, and Carlson has an assist on all 3 or something like that. So I don't mind Carlson as a one-off here tonight. I don't know. Is there anybody else on the blue line you like?
I don't mind Mike Riley, 3,300 if you need a punt. Grizzlick's kind of back in that price range where it's like, all right, maybe I can handle it if you're going to stack Boston 1. Like before when Boston was 24-5 and Grizzlick was 6,100, like it was almost impossible to fit them in. But now with Boston 1 being cheaper and Grizzlick on the, still on the top power play at 4,500, it's, I get the play now. I think if it's a correlation play there. On the cap side, I'm not sure I'd really punt anybody. Brendan Dillon had a big game from like a stat stuffing perspective. He saw some good minutes. He's min price if you need to go there. I don't mind that. But other than that, I'm on board with you on the Carlson. one off, and McAvoy for sure.
Yeah, Brendan Dillon, like he's a guy. It just seems like at every 20 games, he just has a massive game out of nowhere. So yeah, don't mind him for a super cheap price. Like that call on Brendan Dillon. All right, before we go any further, I do have to mention today's show. Today's show sponsor, and our show is sponsored by Jock Market. If you haven't heard, Jock Market has turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. Forget waiting until the end of the game to make money. Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of each night. With daily markets for NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA, you can make real money every hour, every minute, every second of any match or game. Use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold them during the game based on your own analysis. Download the app to get started and use our exclusive Awesemo promo code Awesemo NHL20 for a $20 bonus on your first deposit. This is an exclusive offer for only the NHL Awesemo community. So make sure to take advantage of it today. That's Awesemo NHL20 for a $20 bonus at our show sponsor, Jock Market. All right, moving along. Game 2, Nashville, 2.3 implied goal total going into Carolina. Carolina has a 3.0 implied goal total. I think Nashville's implied goal total has actually come up a little bit through the day, and I think that might be due to Jacob Slavin. Jacob Slavin, game time decision for Carolina. I also saw Jake Bean is expected to run the second power play unit. He was running the second power play unit in practice. Just a couple defense notes there. We don't know who's in net for Carolina, but Alex Nedeljkovic was in the starters crease at morning skate today. That's usually indicative of a starting goalie, so I'm assuming it's Nedeljkovic for Carolina. And then Nashville, UC Saros, who's been just absolutely in fuego for about 2 months now. We don't have firm line combinations on Nashville, so this might be a little bit tough to project, but what do you like to hear, Josh?
I think we both bet Nashville in this series just because, the Hurricanes might win, but the Predators shouldn't be 2-1 dogs in this series, I don't think. So I got them at plus 196, I think.
Yeah, I got them at 198. I think they got up over 200 at some point, but I wasn't just going to keep chasing money after the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, and so the Predators are going to healthy scratch. What's his name? Who's the guy on the top line?
Tolvanen.
Tolvanen, yeah. So Victor Arvidsson's back for the first time in a couple weeks. I would imagine they put the band back together with Forsberg, Johansson, Arvidsson. The Carolina lines are a bit wonky too, right? Svechnikov's with Stahl. He's a game. Is Svechnik? There's a bunch of game decisions for the.
Yeah, I know it seems like there's a bunch of game time tags, but it looks like just about everybody is going to play.
Yeah. So
except for Slavin, who's the game time decision.
Yeah, he's a legit game time decision. Yeah. So I like Svechnikov as a player. I don't know. I haven't looked at his wowies. With Stahl, I know Stahl Niederreiter is the best defensive combo there. Stahl, Foss, Svechnikov, I would imagine is a pretty decent defensive line. They're going to get, the Johansson line, assuming they're all together. And, the thing with Nashville here is I like to fade Nashville just because their ownership's always inflated for whatever reason. Here, it's not. And Carolina hasn't been – they've been a tad leaky defensively recently as well. So, if I can get a fully correlated line on the power play going up against the Hurricanes under 10%, I'm probably going to do it. Yeah, Johansson is what he is, but he's only 3,400. He gets an assist, the shot on goal, and a block, and you take it and run. You want Forsberg and Arvidsson to do the work, and they're at 10-8, the two of them. Price here, the price and ownership is what's driving me to Nashville 1 here. I know they're going against Stahl, but you're going to get me a line that's 14 and change, under 10%, fully correlated. I'm going to play them. So I like Nashville 1 here. You start moving down. I would imagine the Aho line is going to get that second line, or no, it's going to be the Trocheck line. Either or, that's a good matchup for the Hurricanes. So I'm kind of off the second line for Nashville here. If you want to, one off a Mikael Granlund at 1%, for that top power play, that's fine. The third line, I'm probably not going to play them, but I would not talk you out of if you say, hey, I want to play Hall at Duchesne 2-man. They're 6,300, the two of them. They're going to let me get in Colorado power play. I think that's an avenue where I would consider them. If you can't do it with Johansson, Arvidsson, you need the extra salary. I don't mind going to Hall at Duchesne 2-man if you're, power play stacking the Avs. So I think you can do that. On the Carolina side, their ownership is really high, and that's to be expected. That top line with Niederreiter up there is a bit interesting. Like, I don't know how big of a sample they have, the three of them. The power play correlation's a bit off too. Niederreiter and Teravainen are on the second power play unit. Aho's on the top power play unit. Their power play unit is split across three even strength lines, which is kind of annoying. So, I think the play for Carolina is if not to power play stack. I guess you could do a Trocheck, Svechnikov, Stahl, something like that, but I don't know if I want to do that. I think I would probably full stack here. I'd full stack the top line, put all three of them in there. I know the power play correlation isn't there, but it's similar to what you do with Florida 1, Barkov on the top power play unit, and you have Verhagen, Duclair on the second power play unit. Maybe their power play unit has changed, but that's how they were for most of the season. And I think that second line's in play also, especially with Fogle there at 2,800. He brings down the cost of that line tremendously. I've been on Trocheck and Netchus all season. They've been great together. And then Fogle, I think if you're going to go to Carolina too, you include Fogle there. It's going to get you those group of three at a lower percentage. And then, I see the ownership on Carolina 3 here around 20%. I like them, but at that ownership, I'm going to pass.
Yeah, that's a lot. We have Carolina 3 as the number 5 owned line on the night, and that's just that. I think that's a little bit crazy, but I completely agree with you on your point about not power play stacking Carolina. That was something we talked about a lot in the regular season. The Nashville penalty kill with and without Ryan Ellis is just completely night and day. He's an elite penalty killer, and he makes a big difference for that team in that regard. So now that he's healthy, I agree with you. I wouldn't power play stack. If you want to use a couple guys that are on the power play together, if you want to use Aho, Teravainen, yeah, that's fine, because they also play 5-on-5 together. I wouldn't use Aho and Trocheck, let's say, you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you there. I think here's the problem I have with Niederreiter on the top line and Svech on the third line, is that I think it gives them 3 even lines, but it makes the top 2 lines slightly weaker. You know what I mean? I think it makes the third line a lot better, but I think it also slightly weakens the top 2 lines. So that's why, I'm not super gung-ho about stacking Carolina here tonight. Here's the case in point. None of their lines, as currently constructed, this was the team that was in line for the President's Trophy right until the last day of this, season's still going, I guess, but right up until Saturday. None of their lines as presently constructed are at 54% expected goal share or above, but none of them are below 51%. That's the funny thing here, is they're all good, but none of them are great. So I'm not super excited to stack Carolina here. It's just that plus their ownership. It's just not what you want. Carolina 3's ownership is double their top 2 stack percentage. Carolina 2's ownership is 50% higher than their top 2 stack percentage. Carolina 1 is the only one that is somewhat in line, up around 18 or 19%. So yeah, I'm going to have some Carolina 1 here tonight. I'm not going to have any Carolina 2. I'm not going to have any Carolina 3. I am going to have some Nashville 1, because I think Carolina 3 is their weakest line, even with Svechnikov there. And Nashville 1, they've been good this year, not elite. They have been elite in the past, but like you said, at their price, fully correlated. I do like Nashville 1 here. They're probably my favorite line out of this game, actually. When you consider price, ownership, upside, all that, Nashville 1, I really do like them here in this game. I think Nashville 2 gets run over by Carolina 1. That's why I like Carolina 1 the most. So if I were to stack lines out of this game, it would be either top line. I wouldn't look at the depth. On the blue line, as I said, Jake Bean running the second unit. Jacob Slavin, game time decision. If he's out, Brady Shea should probably see a lot more minutes. So I do like Shea here, assuming Slavin is out. What else do you like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of defensemen I like. Dougie's good. Obviously, his ownership's going to be pretty high tonight. You look on the Nashville side, like Yossi at 6%, Ryan Ellis at 2%. Those are guys I want to play at that ownership, especially Yossi at 6%. Yossi's that hasn't been under 20% all season. He's cheaper than Dougie. Get him at a fifth of the ownership. Yeah, it's probably going to creep up during the day. I would imagine he comes in, 12, 15%. But Yossi, Ellis are guys I want to play. Ekholm under 4,000 is someone I want to play. If Slavin's in, I'm interested in him. If he's out, Brady Shea bumps up big time for me.
Yeah, that's what we're waiting for. I do like Brady Shea. I just got to be worried about like if you're using him and Slavin is in, he may not get the minutes that you want. So you might have to late swap. Like you could swap to Brett Pesce. Like if Slavin's in, swapping from Shea down to Brett Pesce, I think is just fine. All right, let's move it. First, I want to ask you about goalies in this one. I think this is probably where I'm going to be taking my goalies from. Love Saros, love his price in this matchup. I'm assuming you do too.
I like both goalies in this game. Saros is a GPP play for sure. Nedeljkovic is more of a cash style play. But, UC Saros at 7,500 against a team with shot volume that has had trouble scoring recently. Sign me up. Sign me up.
Yep, completely agree with you on that. We got a little special going on here at Awesemo.com. New Awesemo Plus users with nearly every DFS sport in season, the NBA on their way to the playoffs, and NHL now in the midst of their playoffs. It's a great time to be a DFS player. Pick up your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for 25% off when you use the promo code Gold Rush. That's promo code Gold Rush, all one word, all in caps. This includes full access to the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and a whole lot more. You won't want to miss this one. This offer is valid through May 20th, so the end Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today by heading to Awesemo.com and using the promo code Gold Rush. That's all one word, all in caps, for 25% off your Awesemo Plus Platinum package. And if you're new to watching us, because maybe some people are just tuning in to see what tattoo Josh is going to get, we have some free premium tools and data up on the site that you can check out for today and see what we have to offer and see if you want to maybe use that promo code Gold Rush. For today, we have NHL player projections free on the site. We have MLB top pitchers also free on the site, and we have PGA ownership for this week. So whether you're playing NHL or MLB tonight or PGA later this week, we have free premium tools and data up on the site to help everybody out. And don't forget, if you want to sign up, that's promo code Gold Rush, all one word, all in caps, for 25% off your Awesemo Plus Platinum package for new Awesemo users. Okay, final game of the night. We've got 5 or 6 minutes to get through it. Lots of time. St. Louis 2.1 implied goal total going into Colorado. The Avs have a 3.4 implied goal total. We've got Binnington versus Grubauer in net. Vladimir Tarasenko is good to go. David Perron and Vince Dunn are not. Perron is on the COVID list. Dunn is still injured. Colorado looks fully healthy, I think, except for Bo and Byram. That's not nearly enough to really change anything on that side. I think the implied goal total here really speaks to just how lopsided this matchup is. But St. Louis did win some games against Colorado this year. They did have a couple big games as well. So it's not like it's a foregone conclusion that this is a 5-0 Colorado final. So why don't you break it down for us, Josh?
Yeah. So obviously Colorado won. They're really expensive. They're the most expensive line of the night, but their ownership is kind of in check, which is, gravitating me towards Colorado 1. There's not much to say about Colorado 1, really. Like, they're one of the most elite lines in the NHL. They're going to score. They're going to play 20, 21, 22, 23 minutes. So if you want to play them, play them. Like, I'm probably going to play them. But there are other lines on the Avs that I really like as well. I like the second line, don't get me wrong. But this third line is super cheap. Brandon Saad's there instead of Donskoy. Saad is $1,600 cheaper than Donskoy. They're comparable offensive players. I'd probably argue that Saad's probably a bit better than Donskoy offensively. They're going to get the bottom 6 of the Blues, which is a mess right now. Saad, Yost, Nishushkin, they are 69, 90. They're under 10,000 for the full line. Let you get in Boston power play. They're going to get the bottom 6 of the Blues. We talk about this ad nauseum. If you want to get exposure to lower owned spots in a high total ownership game, you go to the second, you go to the third lines. This third line is one of the better, if not if the best third lines in the league. So, their ownership's under 4% going against the Blues, third line, fourth line, whatever it is. I really like it. You want to use that second line, it's perfectly fine. Burakovsky, Kadri, Donskoy. The thing that does worry me is they're higher owned right now than the top line. So I'm probably going to be out on the second line just because of ownership. And I go, that first line, third line. 3-game slates are a good time to Josh stack as well. So this is a Josh stack opportunity. I'm not high on Bennington at all. Yeah. Goalie skill doesn't matter. I just talked about that with Craig Anderson. Maybe it's a bad bias, but I just don't like Bennington. So I think you can do the top line. You can take parts of the third line. You can put in Makar with them, Josh stack them. Especially if you think the game flow is going to be 6-1, they blow them out, something like that. So I think there's a lot to like on the Avalanche side. On the Blues side, I'm out on the O'Reilly line without Perron. They're going to get the McKinnon matchup as well. There's not many matchups that are good going into Colorado. Tarasenko's back. I imagine he's in between Shen and Bozak, which, Braden Shen on the wing. I'm not really sure what the Blues are doing there. I prefer him at center. He is on the top power play, though. So if you want to use that line, I think, on a 3-game slate, it's hard to dismiss, lines because, there's only so many options. You have to at least give some consideration. Kadri, Burakovsky, Donskoy is probably the line you can have defensively, but even their numbers have been really good. So I'm just grasping at straws here. I think if I was going to do anything on the Blues, I probably went off Mike Hoffman just for that top power play. He's 4,300. He's the one, he's been scoring a bunch of power play goals. So if I think I was going to do anything on the Blues, it'd be Hoffman one off.
Okay. So I hear you on Colorado too in their ownership. I have a hard time believing that those 3 players are going to be 22+% here tonight.
It's going to come down.
Yeah, I think that's going to come down. Tarasenko's playing with Bozak and Barbashev. They have Schwartz, O'Reilly, and Shen all on the top line. That morning skate actually just came out while we were on the air. So the second line is Barbashev, Bozak, Tarasenko going up against that Kadri line. Kadri's line this year, 66% expected goal share. When they have anybody else but Jonas Donskoy there, it's 60%. This has just been a foolishly good line all year long. I think they're going to throttle that St. Louis second line. I think Colorado 3 is going to throttle that St. Louis third line as well. Yeah. So I have no problem playing Colorado 1 here tonight. Anybody wants to play him, go ahead. The only Colorado 1, I have 10 lineups made so far. The only Colorado 1 I have so far are in some sort of Josh stack. I'm not playing Colorado 1 by themselves. I love the depth here more. I love that second line. I love that third line. They have wonderful matchups going into those second and third lines here from St. Louis. You talked about that third line ownership down, 3%. Brandon Saad's 2,600 and he's averaged 27 goals per 82 games over the last 3 years. This guy's a perennial 25 goal scorer and he's priced at 2,600 and he's in a plus matchup. Really love Colorado second and third lines. On the blue line, I'm not playing anything from the St. Louis side, by the way. On the blue line, nothing really sticking out other than correlating. I do like the idea of playing Devin Taves with the Colorado depth. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree for sure. Taves is my favorite if you're not using the top line. Makar obviously makes sense with them. Taves is my favorite one-off or with Colorado depth. If you want to use Graves, that's fine. I think he's more of a showdown play just because he doesn't get power play time. And if the Avs do go up big, as we talked about, he's going to block some shots. Girard also fine. On the blue side, no.
Okay, I agree with that completely. Just want to give another thank you to our show sponsor, Jock Market. Be sure to head over to Jock Market and use the promo code Awesemo NHL20 when you sign up. Please subscribe. Those subscriptions really help, and click the bell if you want to get notified whenever we come back on the air. Josh, I'm going to ask you for your hat trick pick here in a second. My hat trick pick The returning man for tonight, Mr. Victor Arvidsson. I predict 3 goals from him here tonight. What do you have?
I am going. Man, no, I already used them already. Can't go back to that well.
What, are you going to say Donskoy?
I was. I'm going to go off the board a bit here and say Anthony Mantha.
Anthony Mantha. I like it. Well, you said you don't mind Washington 1 here tonight. Anthony Mantha. I have Victor Arvidsson. Those are our hat trick picks for tonight, but we got to wrap it up and get out of here. Good luck tonight, everybody. Good luck in that 20K. Shout out Dustin Dromarecki. He finally took down the sticks last night. Attaboy, Dustin. Love to see that. For producer Tyler, for Josh Harris, Jake will be back with you guys here tomorrow. Good luck here tonight.